Welcome to The Unfiltered Musician,
where we give you all the tea on life as a musician and how to navigate the industry.
This is episode 4. Know your worth, baby. And welcome back to another episode of The Unfiltered Musician.
Woo! We're back. Did you miss us? Maybe. No, you probably didn't. It's fine. It's fine.
All right. And today we'll be talking about how much you should actually charge for a musical gig.
Very important.
Thanks. That's very helpful. So, first thing I want to mention is a lot of you should focus on actually doing music for fun at first. Like, yes, do that. Don't focus on what music can do for you. Focus on what you can do for music. That's a quote I stole from Ed Bolkovec, Dr. B. So a quick disclaimer. You need to be focusing first on making good music before you can actually make money from it. But if you want to make a living off of it, you have to make money at some point. So we got to talk about actual rates. I know that for me, I charge a rate that not a lot of other people are willing to charge. They feel like it's quite high. But that's me talking to people who aren't willing to up their rates.
But I think that's the old school notion that music is still a glorified hobby and that you can't make money off of this. And we're gonna wipe that out. Floop! It's like the Men in Black thing. That is what we're here to prove. Like it is not a glorified hobby. We are making money off of this.
A little bit of a mind eraser thing. All right, so clean slate. If you call someone, first you have to consider, who are you calling? Who has the money? Who has the budget? Are you calling a bar? Are you calling a winery? Are you calling someone that is trying to put together a wedding? Are you trying to get booked for a corporate gig? All of those have different budgets, and you can negotiate depending on the certain type of gig. So let's first talk about bars. That is probably where you'll make the least amount of money.
Bottom tier. Not a bad thing, but just financially, bottom tier.
Right. They aren't really concerned whether you are the best voice on the planet, the best guitarist on the planet. They don't really care. They just need someone to make the vibe of wherever they are better.
They're just looking for a little bit of atmosphere.
Just a little bit of atmosphere. Please don't spit take. But recently, the last time I called a bar, I asked them, what's your budget? And some people might disagree with me on asking someone about their budget first or just straight up giving the amount that you charge. But I have not been booking bar scenes around Hartford, Connecticut, so I had no clue. I just was going to try and see. So he told me $100 for 3 hours. And I mean, I could do quick math, but that's like $33 an hour. And I was like, no, absolutely not. My usual rate for just any gig that I book is going to be somewhere between $100 an hour to $150 an hour. That's just what I have been able to consistently book. And so I'm not really willing to negotiate any lower than that. And for the musicians that I was going to bring along with me, that was including Vanessa and 2 of my brothers. We were going to do a little band thing. I was like, that is crazy. Because if I'm bringing the 4 of them, are you going to pay them $100 each for those 3 hours? Are you going to spend $400 total? Because we're more like $400 an hour. So that's a $1,200 night for you. I'm assuming he doesn't have that budget because I think he has gigs Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So yeah, that's the experience you can get with bars. They just don't have that money. So that's fine. I personally would recommend those gigs for anyone that is like just starting out. You just want to get your name out there. You've never really gigged before. You're still practicing the negotiation phase of how much money am I actually worth? how much can I push people to actually pay me?
Yeah, I mean, like it's not a bad thing to accept a show like that or a gig because you do have to start somewhere, like what Ryan was saying, and we've all been there 100%. But then, of course, like as your experience increases, your years of experience, your mileage, which I would say is just the amount of gigs that you're getting in different settings that you can attest to if somebody does ask, or that you have that proof to show them, like a electronic press kit or a promotional thing. It's important to start at those places so at least you can even just get content for yourself to then show the bigger leagues. Like, okay, this is what I do. I have the proof of it. You know, the atmosphere, like being in different atmospheres, like it's all important.
Right. There are a lot of places that I have had say, all right, send me some media of you performing. Show me the crowds that you've brought to other places. Like, we need proof that you're actually going to help us make more money by putting your name on a poster or a chalkboard on the side of the road that says live music tonight. We need proof that it's not a waste of our money and it's more of an investment. And I was actually going to try and chime in earlier and say, like, oh yeah, for those that are older and like not gigging a lot, that are just doing this more of as a hobby and rather than a full-time thing, I was going to say that this scene might be good enough for them, but if you have experience, and even if you're doing it part-time, I'd still say this might not even be worth it for you. I mean, if you think like, you know, it's fine, I'll take an extra $100 this weekend, go for it. You do you. But I personally take offense when I'm not paid the right amount. So if you have 15, 20 years of experience, don't you dare take something like that cheap.
But regardless, like stay humble too. Like know your roots, know where you like built from. But of course, like know your rate, and like what is the new thing that's been going around corporate, especially act your wage. I feel like
Yes.
that kind of applies to here too. But of course, like don't be cocky, stay humble, because you never know if you know like the benefit things go around. Like we still do those free shows out of the kindness of our hearts because we have that appreciation for music, and it's not just about the monetary value. Which you know the monetary thing is great, but you also want to stay connected to music.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. And so I would say the next tier up would be something of wineries, something a little more high class, like a higher class restaurant, something that people are wearing like dresses and suits for. They're making a lot of money. They're making more money per entree. They're making more money per drink. And they're consistently making higher bills. So they're able to dish out a couple hundred extra than that other dive bar would. Dive bar doesn't really care. Fine dining, like we said, they care about that atmosphere, so they're willing to pay a little more to get that sort of quality. Again, they don't really care if you're the best person in the world. All they care is, are you going to be fit for this atmosphere right now? And, I mean, you'll find out once you get there.
But also, if you're curious of like how to estimate your own rates, like what I was mentioning earlier, like really think about your years of experience and your mileage, like we were talking about. So, like, what shows have you already done, and you're kind of building the portfolio, or your versatility and expertise, and that can sometimes go a longer way than like years of experience. Like for example, Ryan and I had a show last month. And we've never done anything like this, and neither did the venue. They were like, we're going to see how it goes. No idea. We're like, okay, great. And it was a live karaoke show. And the concept sounded really cool. And I mean, it was as cool as it sounded. Thank God, because no one knew what to expect. But they told us prepare a set list. So I think we prepared like 70 songs. And I don't even
It was
think,
a lot of songs.
Yeah. But I mean, like in a typical like 4-hour show, like that's not unheard of, you know? But we probably didn't even do half the ones on our set list. And instead, people were coming up and saying, well, do you know this song? And, you know, some of us, like half the group were like, yeah, we know that. We could play through it. And, you know, at one point, we even were playing like a Johnny Cash song, like Folsom Prison Blues. And Ryan had never heard of that song before. And he heard it for 15 seconds. And because of his level of expertise, he was able to play it on bass. And we just all kind of chimed in. And so that's kind of the level that we're currently at. And, you know, like we're going to be paid according to that level of expertise as well.
Right. Like that takes years of knowing your instrument to be able to be like, okay, 10 seconds, like all right, let's pull out a chord chart. I'm confident enough where you, who's never met me, can sing along with this band and we'll play it the way that you want it. And I mean, he walked away happy. That was like the first,
He was pretty excited.
first victim of the night. And he was like, this is awesome. You guys rock. Like, you did exactly what I was looking for. I mean, hey, that takes talent. That takes some time to do. Like, I think that's worth the amount that we charge them.
But also, though, I mean, like, no one realizes. Maybe we're like slightly screaming on the inside of like, this isn't on the set list. But like, people look at musicians, maybe like an average, just general crowd that they're just music appreciators. They look at us like mystical unicorns. Like, like, you know, what might seem like very easy to us or just like day-to-day thing, everyone else that's, you know, general public just listening, they're so amazed by it. And this is maybe something that's just, you know, common knowledge to you or something that just comes naturally. And actually, I had a funeral gig. I do quite a few like funerals just like around the area and other stuff. My name had gotten thrown around. And I did a funeral last Saturday, and one of the coordinators of the funeral was trying to get me sheet music, and I had to do "Oh Holy Night," even though it's September. It's fine, you know. You do whatever you're requested sometimes, and so I was telling her like, okay, like I need G major, and she's like, okay, and she sent me the sheet music maybe about 4 different times, and I was like, are you sure you want me to do it? And I was, you know, trying to navigate her through like musicnotes.com, and you know, just things that are so like simple and easy to us. They're like, this is rocket science. And then she was like praising me for helping her. Like, you're so smart. Thank you so much. You're amazing. And I'm like, well, thank you. And of course I have like, you know, rock star patience from just all that I do. But it's just so funny to realize like all the little, even like mundane things that we have to do as musicians. It is rocket science to other people. And like what we do is truly amazing. Like even the work to get to a show. Like people don't realize like the prep that it takes for us, even if you have been doing shows for quite some time with a similar set list. Like, of course, you know, always trying to challenge ourselves and add more things in, but we are still rehearsing at least once a week or trying to throw in a few rehearsals before a show to make sure we're still like on our chops. And people don't see that. It's like the iceberg analogy where like you see the little tip and then like all the work that has to be done to get into it is below the waterline.
Right.
And people don't see that.
Yeah, and that's kind of going along any creative trade, really, like photography, videography, any of those other things. It's like you don't see the 10 years of practice it took me to get to this level where I can produce something fast, I can produce something really well, and I can make it seem like it was nothing for me. And you might think, oh, like it only took you 10 minutes, like I should charge you less because you did it fast. Like, no, I only did it in 10 minutes because I spent the last 10, 20, 30 years doing it so well that I can do it in 10 minutes. So that's kind of why like a mechanic or a videographer or a musician is going to charge so much more. Recently, I just brought my car into a mechanic. He charged me $150 an hour for labor, and I didn't even sweat it because I was like, yeah, it makes sense. Like, you're going to have it done by tomorrow. Like, of course, like, that makes sense. So for a musician, if you're approaching someone and you're saying, okay, everyone in my band, $100 an hour. That's what we have to be paid. They might be like, whoa, that's crazy. But they need to understand, like, this is what we're going to bring to the table. We're going to bring, each of us have 5, 10, 15 years of experience, and we know how to work a crowd. We know how to respond to them. We know what music to choose. We're just going to be everything that you need in that moment.
We are environment enhancers. I feel like that should be
really
my new title. But music is so detrimental to the social scene. Like people don't even realize that. Even during the pandemic, like 2020 when it started, it's just wild like how many people did lean on the arts for like emotional support and stability during like a very unprecedented, uncertain time. Like we are, very much the fabric of what goes into the social scene, and we're super important for those bar scenes or, lighting up a corporate event or weddings, all these things. Like music and the arts are very much at the forefront of what makes that experience amazing.
Yeah. And that's actually a good thing that you mentioned, weddings, corporate things. let's move up a tier. Okay, so now we're talking about the high-paying clients, the ones that a lot of people want to deal with. These are the people who have budgets, and the things that they care about most are quality. So they're willing to spend a pretty penny in order to have the best thing possible. So for me, I mean, for the two of us, we've talked about this. If our wedding is to come up, we're going to spend a lot of money to have stuff right. Because first of all, we understand what good quality is, so we can vet people out like that.
Yeah, we've got particularly higher standards.
We have some really high standards, and I wouldn't say that we're the only people ever to have high standards. So I'm sure there's other people who are willing to pay even more than what our budget might handle in the future.
Like everyone gets one piece of bread at our wedding. That's the entree and the dessert. And
Right,
like,
but the band is going to be so good that you won't want to leave.
yeah, you're going to be dancing so hard, you're going to forget that there might have been food. And there won't be because of the music is going to be a lot.
Right. So for the people who have those huge budgets and they're like, it needs to be the perfect day, they're like, no expenses spared. Like, we can't have cold chicken. Everything's got to be perfect. We need people dancing on the floor all night. We need a DJ right after the live band is there. The live band needs to play this music, all that different stuff. They're willing to spend $10,000, $15,000 on the perfect band. And so if you think about it, you can have a 5 to 10 piece band because it really is not going to hurt you hiring more people to have a better sound. And actually, I recently did that for a festival, which I would also group into these higher paying clients. I told them, I think you'll get a better experience if I hire one more musician. So that means you need to add $400 or $500 to what you're paying us total. I didn't take it out of the budget they had already given me. I told them, you need to add more so that I can give you the experience that you deserve to this event. And they were like, yeah, absolutely, let's do it. They didn't blink an eye. And, I mean, those are the clients you want to deal with. The festivals, they're always sponsored by people who have a lot of money. So think about insurance companies. Like, they can give $10,000 at the drop of a hat to a community event and be like, okay, spend whatever you got to do to make this fantastic. Our name is going to be on it, so it has to be a certain amount or a certain caliber of quality. And that's when they can pay 3 or 4 different bands, each a couple $1,000s. And they'll be like, we'll pay for travel, we'll take care of the stage, we'll take care of the sound. And those are the ones that you really want to be a part of.
Yeah, and going back to like the perfect moment kind of made through music, whether it be weddings or even funeral gigs. So like, for example, full transparency, my rate for funerals, for example, the base rate, I make $150, and that will include at least one song. And funerals are about hour and 15 for just the normal service. And then if they request any other songs after that first one within the base pay, I say it's about $50 after the fact. And so sometimes you're doing 2 or 3 songs, so it's a pretty good setup for an hour and 15. But you also have to factor in that travel time and the preparation. So I did have somebody ask one time, like, why is that your rate? And they never said whether it was too high for them or they just were asking out of curiosity. And never be afraid to explain that. Or if you feel like somebody is arguing your rate, sometimes people just need the explanation. Because again, like, we are mystical unicorns. Like, some things are just not like, not common knowledge to the general public. And so if you have to break it down for them and be like, well, it's the preparation beforehand, and especially for funeral gigs, those are pretty personalized. And, like the last funeral I did, I mean, I've sung Hallelujah for a lot of different funerals, but they asked for that and they asked for Oh Holy Night. And sometimes you never know what you're going to be singing next. It's not just like a set list that you can decide and run right in. They ask for personal requests. So you can say, well, it's based on me having to learn the music and, that iceberg moment, all the things, all the preparation that goes into it leading up to the event, and then your time being spent there and just factoring all of that in. So sometimes you just have to explain that to validate yourself. And it's really important to do that at times.
Right. Let them know what's included in the package. It's a fair ask. So be prepared to say, this is why I'm worth this. And a lot of times you can say that you're worth more because you have a social media following. You have people who listen to your music Or you can base it off of the experience of other gigs. So say like for the last 2 years, I've been charging $100 an hour on average for my gigs. There may be times where you decide like, okay, I'm going to pull down to 75. I might pull down to 60. Personally, I've never pulled myself farther than like under 60. But I looked up the statistic earlier, and if you want just straight up numbers, I'll tell you, the average U.S. musician part-time is making $47 an hour, which to me, I'm like, oh my God, what are you guys doing? I don't even think it's the fault of the people that are paying them. I think it's the fault of the musician not demanding that they get paid the right amount, because a lot of people just don't know. They're like, oh yeah, like $30 sounds great. It's better than a part-time job to some. That's not including the hours that you're putting underneath the tip of the iceberg. But $47, that's crazy. Like I said, I personally wouldn't go below 60. I don't care what your level of expertise is. That's going to include your time to get there, to set up, to practice, to think about the set list, all that different stuff. 60 needs to be
when you think
the
about
base.
it too, I mean, this is, far different from a 9 to 5 job, which is like very consistent consecutive hours. But like that prep time of getting there, setting up, and then, being there, breaking down, going back home, like you can't just fit another show of like that same small increment of money. Like it doesn't pan out. Like the math is not mathing.
It doesn't make sense. And so if you're thinking as a business person, the person who's actually paying you, this is what's gotten me to push people to pay me more. I say, okay, if I'm going to pay this musician $400, they're going to play for 2.5, 3 hours, and I have a restaurant. Whenever I invite musicians, there's like hundreds more people that come in. Okay, so now my bar is getting probably an extra $1,000, $2,000 a night. That percentage that I have to pay them, it's not going to matter because I'm making that back anyways. I'm still in the green. It's fine. It's just how much profit margin am I willing to decrease or to take home, But let's move on to the top tier gigs. These are corporate gigs. So we haven't had many to run-ins ourselves, but I have researched this a lot. I know that they're the top tier because we've had some friends explain to us how they actually work and how much people are actually paying. So think about the brands that are currently in your home or the brands that you currently drive by every day when you're like on Main Street of whatever town you're in. So you're passing by Dunkin' Donuts. You're passing by Tractor Supply, Walmart, random corporate businesses like that are all over the U.S., okay? So those people have crazy, crazy, crazy budgets. Like their advertising budgets are so large that it's more than they would pay any salary to anyone in one corporate building. Okay.
And like we even saw like Tractor Supply, they rented out Bridgestone Arena in downtown Nashville.
That's why I mentioned Tractor Supply.
Yeah, and they had like I think they hired Kenny Chesney and they just paid for the whole stadium, but maybe they had like 2,000, 3,000 workers, and that stadium holds, in the tens of thousands. So, they had a private concert with a big artist renting out an entire arena. That's a lot of money.
Right. And that's an arena that they regularly have those massive international recording artists perform in. So I talked to one of my buddies and I asked him about a corporate event that he went to. It was a trip to Cancun. Okay. They brought in Trevor Noah just to have as a speaker for fun. Then they brought in Post Malone. Okay. So those are two very, very expensive people right off the bat. We know that Post Malone is making millions. I'm sure Trevor Noah is also making millions. So I asked him, how much do you think they paid to have Post Malone? He told me $500,000 for one gig. One gig, a private gig. And I bet they didn't blink an eye. So if you're a no-name person, or okay, maybe not as high as Post Malone, maybe somewhere between, you got a decent following, maybe 50K to 100K followers on your social media stuff. So a lot of people know your name already. When you say, okay, I want you to pay for my travel, pay for my hotel, pay for my meals, make sure the sound is taken care of, and you're going to pay me and my band $50,000 or $75,000 for one gig. That corporate place, because they have so much money, they're going to be like, okay, I'm saving money by going with this cheaper artist. To them, you're still not even pushing their boundaries of the budget. So there's a lot of money to be made in corporate gigs. That's all I have to say.
Well, you said a lot. It was good.
So the last topic we want to talk about is saying no. So we talked about all the money that can be made, but we didn't talk about when the situation is not worth it. So there are times where you have to be like, you know what? This is not for me. So what are some examples that you can think of, Vanessa?
I mean, I've been in a few situations where a certain venue is saying that you have to play certain songs, or, you know, some things like might be out of your capacity to do so. Like, for example, like say your band wouldn't be able to put together a certain arrangement in time, or, you know, your vocalists aren't able to sing that specific song, and just things won't work out. So I've had some venues say like, you have to have this music, but you know, in certain bands I have been in, like sometimes the songs that they suggest are just not our vibe or not what we specifically do. So we have to decline. And I guess like when things like that, if a venue or someone is trying to be controlling of your image or the set list, and it's kind of going against like your personal morals of like who you are as a person and who you are as a performer and a musician, then you can say no. There will be other opportunities, but if you want to adhere to your brand and you feel like that's something that you feel strongly about, then you can and should say no.
Right. If someone is like, okay, we have a gig in 2 days for you. We're going to pay you $5,000. You're going to sing and play guitar alone. All right, that sounds fantastic to start. But wait, 2 days, where is it? They say, oh, you have to fly from New York to Australia. Okay, first of all, that's like a 20-plus hour flight. I think someone told me it was like 24 hours. If you're going straight there, so that's not including like any layovers. You have to figure out your own hotel. You have to figure out your own meals, all that stuff. That's not a good deal. That's not a good deal. Now you might be like, okay, $2,000, like anywhere else would be fine. They might say, oh, you have to perform this specific set list. We need you to do these songs and we need you to perform them this specific way. That's when you go, heck no, this is not for me. Find someone else. This is actually not worth it.
But like, unless you want to challenge yourself too, like if you want to step out of the box and maybe this is your sign to do it, like try it out. But only if you feel like you do have the capacity and the time to be able to do it, but don't feel forced or feel like you have to conform to that because they're telling you that, you know?
Right. You have to consider the entire package deal when it comes to the rate. So we recently did a gig on the street, literally steps away from our apartment. And that was great for us. We had no travel budget. We could just take our equipment right down there and just play. It was so easy. So like that package deal to us was great. And I think they paid us $150 an hour per person. We had a 4 or 5 person band. So it was like, yeah, this is great. This is exactly what we want to do. So you have to consider the big picture when it comes to negotiating. And if you want to talk about negotiating, maybe you should follow our podcast and listen to another episode.
Ooh, the not so shameless plug.
Ooh,
wow.
We'll talk about negotiation another time. But that is going to bring us to the end of today's episode. So thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Unfiltered Musician.
And if you liked this episode, give us a like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. It's so cute to see our other musical content.
Message us with suggestions about what you want to hear about next at unfilteredmusician.podcast on Instagram or unfilteredmusician@gmail.com. We are here for you. See you next Sunday.
Peace.